Hey everyone, my name is Pritam and you're watching Tech with Pri. Welcome to my channel and I'm back with another exciting technical video. And this is the third video of our newly created technical series, that is the ServiceNow integrations. So by watching last two videos, we have already got an idea about why ServiceNow integration is so important, especially right now. Okay, I have explained you in the first video. Also, we have understood with the real world example what is the web service integration, what is the concept of integration. Okay, and also with a practical example I have shown you what is REST and different components of REST. Now it's time to jump into this ServiceNow, okay, and understand about ServiceNow web service integration. So in today's video we are going to learn a lot of things which would be very important for all of you, okay, to understand how ServiceNow REST message works, outbound REST message that we will configure. We would understand so many things, and finally I'm going to show you something by doing in PDI. Okay, so we would try to connect with an external application from our ServiceNow in today's video. So make sure you watch the full video to understand each and every concept. Okay, so let's quickly see what are the things we are going to learn, but I promise I won't be there for a long time in the PPT. I will jump into my PDI and I'll show you how it works. Okay, alright, so what are the things we are going to learn in today's video? Let's see it quickly. First, what is ServiceNow Outbound integration and how it works? So after understanding it, you won't have any confusion regarding the outbound integration. Okay. Second, we would see the different components of outbound REST message, and very importantly, it will be practical. So I'll show you in ServiceNow in the REST message configuration form that what are the different fields are there and what are the purpose of all those fields. Okay, how they work actually. So in detail, we would understand practically. That is very important. Next, after understanding all these things, it's time we will connect with a external API. So for that, very importantly, we would understand the API documentation from the external app. So you have seen in the last video also I've shown you, right, when from app 1 to app 2, right, you're sending the request. App 2 is saying that, okay, before you send me request, this is a documentation, this is a API documentation that I have. You have to read this to understand how you can send me a request, right? So we would understand and we would analyze that documentation from the external app where we would be connecting today, okay, in the practical demo. And finally, we will create a custom app and configure the outbound REST message. Very important. Lastly, we will test it, the REST message with the HTTP response. So maybe the video can be a little bit large, but trust me, each and every information will be very important for you. Okay, let's not waste any more time. Let's get into the ServiceNow outbound integration. Alright, so already we have understood the concept of integrations, right? Also the REST API, how it works. I have already explained you in the last video. If you missed the video, it is very important you watch the video, because this concept of outbound integration is completely dependent on the REST API and the concept of web service integration. So if you have any confusion understanding those two concepts, please watch this video. Okay. Alright, so we would try to understand it again with the same example. So we have app 1 and we have app 2. This time the app 1 is ServiceNow and app 2 is some external application. Okay. Now in ServiceNow, we want to connect with the external application. That's why it's outbound, right? ServiceNow outbound. So from ServiceNow, I'm sending the request to external application. Okay. So when some external application will be sending request to ServiceNow, then it would be called as inbound integration. That we will learn in upcoming videos. Don't worry on that. Let's now understand about the outbound integration. So now from ServiceNow, I want to connect with the external application. Okay. So the same process. So this external app will say, okay, so I have some API documentation available. Okay. So you can read it. So where all the informations are there that you need to send me a request. And also in our practical today, we would analyze the API docs. So what are the information contents and all these things, we would understand that. But as of now, we know that if one app, that is app 1, which is ServiceNow, wants to connect with the external application, first, external application will provide the API documentation. First, the API documentation has to be understood clearly, okay, from ServiceNow. Because based on that, ServiceNow will create an outbound REST message. Why ServiceNow will create outbound REST message? Because with this outbound REST message, we will send the request to the external application for some data, and external application will send us the response. So how it will work? So first, we will configure an outbound REST message by following the API documentation. So whatever the fields are required, so okay, everything we will see in practical, don't worry. So we will configure outbound REST message based on the API docs, and once it is done, we will send the request for the data for anything that we are looking for to the external application. And now you know, from external application, it will send the response in the JSON or XML format, and also with the response code. So in the last video, I have shown you popular response code. Okay. So now this data is coming in JSON and XML format with a response code, which is fine. Now in ServiceNow, where we are going to use the data, we can use this data, which is returning from an external application after doing the outbound REST message, with the help of different configuration. Like we can use it in a business rule. So we can use this JSON and XML format data, which is coming. We can convert it into an object form and we can use it with the help of the REST API. Okay, that's something we are gonna see practically in the next video, where I'll show you how you can invoke a REST message through the business rule. There I'll show you how with the help of the REST API we can get this external data. So other than business rule, we can also use it in a schedule job. It is very, very important. It's very common also using a schedule job. So for an example, like, in a particular table in ServiceNow, so regularly some data updated from external system. So which means it is not in ServiceNow. So from some external system, data comes on a schedule basis. So it's like every day maybe it can be refreshed. So that configuration can be done with the help of schedule job. Then we can use it in a script include, we can use it in a UI action, or in the integration hub. So for some advanced stuff. So don't worry, integration hub is something that I'm going to discuss in this series only. And other than that, all this configuration thing I have already discussed: business rule, schedule job, script include, UI action. If you want to understand it in a better way, you can follow all these videos. Okay. Also, I'm going to put the link in the description for all these videos, so you can go and check it out. Now we understand that, so whenever an external app is sending the data, sending back to us based on our request, so then we can use this return data with the help of this business rule, schedule job, all this stuff. So where we can display the result? So very simply, as you know, we can display it in a ServiceNow form, like simply in a form view. So some data we are getting, suppose the weather, we are getting the temperature, we are getting the wind speed, or many other thing. Then we are configuring in business rule and all this stuff, and then we can display it in a form, maybe in a field, or in a service portal, in a report, or in notifications. So this is the whole structure of ServiceNow outbound integration. Quick recap: ServiceNow wants to connect with this external app. So this is the API documentation. By following this API documentation, we have created an outbound REST message. Okay. From outbound REST message, after configuring it successfully, we are sending the request and we are checking whether the response code we are getting, it is perfect or not. I mean, that means it is working or not. And the data which is returning in JSON or XML format, we are using it in different ServiceNow configurations, like all these options we have. And then we are displaying it in the different portal. So now in your mind, this concept is clear that how it's working. So right now we are going to learn about this thing, outbound REST message, how we can create that, how we can follow an API doc and use that in different components of outbound REST message. So before analyzing the API docs, we need to understand different components of outbound REST message practically inside of ServiceNow. So that means let's get into the PDI and let's understand the different component of outbound REST message. Now the app that we are going to create after this, after the understanding of the different components of outbound REST message, that we are going to create inside of the studio, because you know already how we can create app in studio. I've already explained this in my ServiceNow developer playlist. But before that, to understanding the different component, I can directly go to the all, and to access that, we can directly type REST message. You can see under the system web service, under the outbound, we have the REST message. So this is the outbound REST message. Let's open it. So these are some by default out of the box REST message configuration. We can see it. Okay. So let's create a new one. So I'm going to click on new. So you can see, so this is the form where we will configure the REST message. Okay. So let's understand each and every component of it, because it is very, very important. Before we proceed with connecting with external application, we need to understand each of this field. Okay. So the name, first of all, it signifies the name of the REST message. It is very, very important, because with the same name, we will call it through the REST API. Okay. Again, in scripting, how we can use REST API and all this stuff, we will discuss in the next video. But before that, we need to understand this all concepts, so that in the next video, we can understand the REST API in this scripting. So name, so let me give something demo for the time being. So this is not the one we are creating, just for example I'm showing, because I need to save the record to show you something more that I'll discuss again. Description is same, application is global. Right now I'm in the global application, so you can mention from where this application can be accessible, either from this application only or from the other application scope. Fine. Endpoint, this is very important. What is the endpoint? Endpoint simply means here the base URL where you want to connect. Okay, for an example, if you remember, I've shown you last day the bookshelf.com, right? So sorry, it's the bookscape.com. So you can see in the bookscape.com, the basic URL, although I'm not seeing the API documentation, but for your understanding purpose, so in the bookscape.com, if I want to connect from ServiceNow to bookscape.com, the endpoint I can use at bookscapes.com, https:/bookscape.com. Okay, so that's the base URL. So you may ask me, Preetham, so if this is a base URL, so what other type of URL it can be? So for an example, I want to get some data, right, from a particular fiction type of book. So you see, the moment I click on fiction, you can see the URL gets changed. So this is more of a specific URL, because this URL will give me all the different type of books related to the fiction. You can see category is saying as fiction, and other thing which are there like a question mark and all this thing, we will understand it in a minute, so stay with me. All right, so now we understand one URL is a base URL and another can be a specific URL which we are looking for. So if in ServiceNow we want to show all the list of these books from this website, then the endpoint should be different like this. Okay, this is the endpoint. So like I discussed, these all are different resource, right? For different resource, we have different URL. We have understood in the last video. And practically while configuring the REST message also, we are following the same. So the endpoint, actually it contains the base URL. So just for example, let me copy this URL. Okay, just to give you an idea. So this is the endpoint, base endpoint, okay? And I'll show you where you will configure other endpoint. Don't worry. And again, the endpoint should be mentioned in the API docs. Here, for example, I've shown you like this. So when we will create an app after some time, then I'll show you how you can see the API documentation and get all this information. Authentication. So here we have three type of authentication that provides by ServiceNow. Very important. You need to understand that. First of all, no authentication. It will depend from the third-party app. So if there is a authentication method is there in the third-party app. So for an example, I want to connect with the bookscape.com. So bookscape.com, in the API of bookscape.com, it is written that, okay, if you want to connect us from any external application, that could be ServiceNow or anything, then you need to use a basic auth, maybe for an example, or OAuth 2.0 you have to use. Okay. So based on that, you will come here and you will choose this option. So everything will be written in the API documentation, so don't worry. No authentication means if this web service or the external application says that, okay, we don't need any authentication stuff, you can directly connect us. Okay. Other than that, it could be basic or OAuth. So basic is nothing but when this external application will be saying that, okay, if you want to connect us, so you need to create a profile where it will have username and password. So that's what basic auth means. So username and password. And that same profile, that username and password that this application will provide to you, you need to create a profile here in the basic auth with the same username and password. So if I click on new, you'd be seeing the name, username and password. So this information, this username and password will be provided by this external application. Okay, all right. So this is a basic auth. We also have the OAuth 2.0, which is very popular, guys, OAuth 2.0. And we would understand how OAuth works actually in the inbound integration. So when I'll explain inbound, ServiceNow inbound integration later in this series, there I'll show you how this OAuth works and how it is, and it is so powerful. So basically, just to give you an idea, so again, this external website, if it says that, okay, we support the OAuth, so then you need to create a OAuth profile, and all the information of OAuth will be provided by the client, I mean the third-party app or the external app. So if I click on new, you see here, there would be a lot of other things. The name of the OAuth provider, different password type, and OAuth entity scope, and different things. Okay. We would see all this example in upcoming future videos. Don't worry. I'll go to the advanced level to this ServiceNow integration. All right. So this is about OAuth. Then we have also an option for mutual authentication. So if you click on that, it's same like a basic auth. So before connecting, before data sends from the external app to the ServiceNow or from ServiceNow to the external app, you need to configure the mutual authentication profile, which is not very common. I mean, you won't find a lot of use in for mutual authentication profile as of now. Then we have a HTTP request tab, which contains the HTTP header. So what is the HTTP header? So HTTP header is nothing but a place where you can see here, it's kind of a key and value, name and value pair, same like a JSON format. So here you can mention, like for an example, content type could be one of the example, like content type, and then it could be application JSON. So the content of this REST message will be in the application JSON. Okay, then also you can mention another one like this, accept. So what you are accepting? Accepting application JSON as well. So what you are telling through that particular line is that we will be sending data to your app bookscape.com, and you will send us the response in the JSON format. So accept means we are going to accept. ServiceNow is saying, ServiceNow outbound REST message is saying we are going to accept it only in the application JSON format. Clear? Now we understand each and everything here. I'm going to right click and save it. So you can see now all these things are same, but we have a separate section called HTTP methods that has created. What is this HTTP method? So now you have understood in the last video already that what is the job of HTTP method. So suppose I want to get a specific book or specific section, specific category. So I'm going to get this with the help of get. So get actually to fetch some record. Okay. Same way post, if you want to create a new record or create a new order maybe in this website. So we are going to use a post. I've already explained you that. So in the HTTP method, by default, this default get method creates. Okay, you can create a new one. You can create a new one by clicking the new button. So let's open the default get method that is created, and let's understand what are the things there inside of the method. Now, the first thing that you observe, there are many things which already you have seen in the REST message, like the endpoint at the beginning, then the authentication, HTTP request. Okay, but we have some fields added here. So this is the endpoint I was talking about, guys. Now, previously, the endpoint that we have mentioned like this, bookscape.com, I was telling the base URL. So how I will connect to the external application. Again, the endpoint information you will be find in the API docs. Just to show you, I have used this, base URL here, bookscape.com. Now, if I want to get some data for a particular category or something, then what should be the endpoint? It would be again mentioned in your API doc. So that would be a specific endpoint, not the base endpoint. Because we are using the get method to get a specific record, like for an example, what is the price of this book? Okay, a YOLO God, an Idol of Africa. What is the price of this book? So that could be a specific record we are looking for. For that, the URL is also gonna change, right? You can see, and the endpoint will also gonna change. So now you understand why there are two endpoints are there. So first endpoint is the whole REST configuration. You can create multiple endpoint again for multiple methods. So here we can see for the get method, which is by default created, you can see there are other method as well, post, put, patch, delete. So again, for that you will need to create a different HTTP method and the endpoint would be different. Again, the authentication. So again, it is also very important. The authentication that you created previously. So if I just quickly go back. So authentication that we have created in the REST message, that is the authentication type you defining for all the HTTP method, whichever you are going to create, until you are making a manual change inside of this method. Right now for the REST message, we have configured the basic auth for an example. And in the specific get method, HTTP method, you can see the authentication type is inherit from parent. So that means it is also having the basic auth. Suppose for an example, to access this particular price of this book, you need to get another access token. So in that case, you need to provide the authentication type as basic or the OAuth, whatever its requirement. Okay, that could be the case. So for a specific method, the authentication process can be specific as well. That's why we have two authentication as well. Same if I go to the HTTP request, already you have understood HTTP headers. Again, for a particular method, if different HTTP header is required, then you can provide different HTTP header. Now, very importantly, what is the HTTP query parameters? This is very interesting, and we are going to see it, how to use it practically in the creation of the application when we'll do it. So you can see here, if I go, when I was going to the Bookscape, it's the bookscape.com, right? The moment I click on fiction, it is changing, the category has become fiction, and then we have a question mark, and we have this param underscore id, param id, some value, then we have and, this and sign, then we have level equal to again a value 1, and some slug id equal to fiction dash 1 2, right? So this is a key, this is a value, right? This is a construction of a query parameter. So whenever you will see an URL, from the next time guys, whenever you will see an URL and you will see question mark, you'd see after that there are key, and then there is a value, there is a key, and there is a value. This is nothing but the format of the query parameter. So that means you are sending the query here. So you are filtering the result. Previously you are only looking for bookscape.com, the whole bookscape.com. Now you are looking in on a particular section called fiction. Okay, so that's why these are the filter parameter you have sent. So that is known as the query parameter. So that means we are only querying the fiction book, not other type of book. If I go to action and adventure, you can see query parameter is still there, but the value got changed. So here you can mention the query parameter, the name of the query parameter, that is key, and this is the value. What is the value of it? So now if I go here, so that means how we can configure is that slug id equal to fiction. So I can configure like this, slug id, I'll just copy. So here this is the name of it, slug id, and the value is, what is the value is fiction. Okay, so this is how you configure a query parameter. Okay, the query parameter actually sends after the endpoint. So when you will run it, when you will send the request to this website or web service, query parameter automatically add here. Next we have few things called variable substitution. It is also very important. So whenever you are mentioning something in the URL, so maybe you are passing some value here, you can directly put a variable here, and then the variable's value you can parse it. So for an example, here maybe I want to put the category. So suppose I want to see a specific category, so I need to provide the name of the category. Okay, again based on the API documents I need to follow the structure, but for this example you can understand that we need to provide the category name. We have seen also here it is written as, so if I go to fiction, you can see category is written as fiction, so category is fiction. So now I can directly type fiction, or I can provide a variable here. So how I can provide a variable? I'll give a $sign here, then the curly braces, and here I will put category. Okay, like this, that's it, done. And here also I can add another variable, and then if I click on auto generate variables, you'd see what happened. Automatically it identified, okay, so there is a variable here. It takes a variable, and then in the test value you can provide the value as fiction. So whenever the URL will run, it will replace this category, this variable, and the fiction will be placed here. This is why we use the variable substitution. Now three things are remaining here. One is the preview script usage, HTTP log level, and test. All these things we will see in the practical right now. So now I hope all the different components are clear, and that was very important for us, because now we want to create a custom application which we will connect with the external web service. Okay, let's quickly go to the studio, and all this step you know. I'm gonna click on create application, and what is the application we are going to do? First of all, before we go ahead, let's see the API documentation, or let's understand what we are going to do actually. So what we are going to do, we are going to, so based on the IP address that we are going to provide, we would be able to get the information for that IP. Like for an example, like we would be able to get the location, the state, the country, and many more other information through the REST message. So that means from ServiceNow, I'm going to send a connection to the external application, and we are going to provide the IP address, and it will share us, and it will tell us all the information for that IP address. How we are going to do that? So first of all, we need to find an external web service first. Actually, there are so many websites which actually provides you your current IP details and all this information. So you can find any of them, or you can just go to Google and search for like API for, you can ask for free API to get the IP details or stuff like that. So I have found one of them that I'm going to use here, and the name of it is IP geolocation. ipgeolocation.io. Yeah, this is the website. So this is the one. So it's the first website you can open. So this is the website. So for an example, here I will search 8.8.8.8, which is a very popular Google DNS. Okay, if I search, you can see the country name is showing United States, state is California, city is Mountain View. We have the latitude, longitude, time zone is there, ISP is there, currency is there, country flag, many more different things are there. So this is the thing I want. I want to connect with this external web application from my ServiceNow, and I'm gonna send the IP and it will give me all this information. Or specifically, I can ask for information like country name or city. I would be able to get it. Okay, that's something we are gonna do it. You can just click on sign up with Google, or you can directly click on sign in, and then you can connect with GitHub or Google. So I'm gonna connect with my Google ID, and after that, if you go to the dashboard section, you can see there is a API keys that got generates. Now what is this API key? Now this website is telling, okay, so if you want to connect us from ServiceNow, you need to use this API key, then only you would be able to connect us. So you need to use this API key. How we are going to use that? That is also should be mentioned in the documentation. So let me copy that API key for the time being. This is the documentation that I need to open. You can see this is the documentation for the IP geolocation, and you can read it out. There are so many things. You can see the authentication is mentioned as API key. Okay, two ways authentication. One is the API key, one is the request origin. So that's something also I don't know what is that, but API key is something that we are going to use. We already copied it. You can see you can make authorized request to our API key by passing the API key as a query parameter. So they have already mentioned that you have to pass the API key as a query parameter to connect with us. To get your API key, log in with your API console to our API console and get your API key. That we have already got it. Okay, and this is a request origin. How you can get that, that is also mentioned here. Now there are other informations are there. Now here, if I go to the IP geolocation API, that's we are looking for. So this is the API. Okay, you can see IP geolocation API provides real-time and accurate geolocation and security information for any IPv4 or IPv6 address and domain name along with your user agent, blah blah blah. So this is the API documentation which I'm reading right now. Okay, so for any website, if you just type, like for an example, you want to get the API documentation of Spotify, for an example, a music app, you know that. So you can just type Spotify. I'll show you quickly how easy it is. Spotify API documentation, and you will be redirected to the, you can see developer.spotify.com web API. So how you can import different stuff in your applications or your website, it is mentioned here. Okay, so we won't go for Spotify, that would be complex for you as of now, but you can, explore it by your own. It could be any other website that is providing some service and you want that service, you want to see how you can invoke those service in your ServiceNow or maybe some other app you are using. You can do that. You can go for the API documentation. Now we'll come back here. You can see if we want to search for a single IP location. So with the IP address, single IP location API can be used in two ways: to look up any IP address or domain name. We can search with the IP address. Also, we can use a domain name with JSON or XML response. The URL for this endpoint is, you can see the URL already mentioned of the endpoint. You can see the URL for this endpoint again like this. So already they have provided the endpoint to access this particular website. So this is something we can consider as a base URL. Okay, and you can see after searching, the result is coming in this format. So this is a JSON format. That means key, we have a value, key, value, right, district, all these informations are coming based on the 8.8.8.8. so this IP. Then if I come here, okay, so in order to find geolocation information about an IP address or a domain name, pass it in as a query parameter like below. Note that API key is also passed as a query parameter. So this is the base URL. This is a base URL we have found here that we will configure in a moment. And here if I go down, this is what I'm getting is the how we can get the IP address. So first, so this is a specific method. So we are going to get the IP address. So we are going to use a get method, and there the endpoint is this, the base URL. Then we are passing the query parameter after question mark API key, then the API key that I've already copied, and then the IP address. Then it will show me the result. So let's see that. Let's see that in practical. So I'll go to the ServiceNow Studio. Here we are creating a new app. So I'm going to click on let's get started, and the name of the app would be maybe IP lookup. So IP lookup. Okay, you can put some description. For the time being, I'm just gonna hit on create, and no roles, nothing I'm doing. I'm directly going to the studio, and I'm gonna click on IP lookup to open the app. So I've zoomed a little bit also. So now I want to create a REST message. So I'm directly going to the create application file. I'm gonna type here REST. So you can see REST message under the outbound integration. So after hitting the create button, I'm gonna get the same page that I was showing you in the platform. In the name, I can provide again IP lookup. So let me, oh, sorry. So IP lookup. Okay. Some description I can provide. Now here I need to provide the base URL, and from here the base URL that I'm gonna get is, this is the base URL. It is saying in the documentation API docs. Okay. Let's copy this and let's paste it in our endpoint. So this is the base URL. Here there is no authentication. The API key I have to provide it with the help of the query parameter. And query parameter, you can see I cannot provide in a header. So here I can send the request in the application JSON and accept it application JSON. I can mention that here, but it is not mentioned in the API doc, so it is not required. That means without mentioning this also it will work. So authentication, nothing. So I'm going to click on submit button so that I can go to the HTTP method where we need to configure the query parameter as well the endpoint. So again, when you save this REST message, let it load. Yes, so a default HTTP method has created. So you can delete it and create your own, or you can follow with this. So I'm going to open it because we need to also use the get method. Now here endpoint is this, and if I go to the API, it is saying to access this, first I need to provide the API key as a parameter, as a query parameter. Okay, so let's see the parameter actually. So ignore this URL, all this stuff, just see the parameter. IO, IPGO, this is a base URL, and after that, so only we are adding the query parameter. So that means in the query parameter, that means I don't need to provide anything here. I'll go to the HTTP request, I'll go to the query parameter, and here first I need to provide the API key, right? So it is written as API key. So I'm not going to copy because already the API key has copied. So API key, I think K is in capital. Let me close this website. So API key like this, and here I'm gonna paste the API key. Okay, I have copied the endpoint. So this is my dashboard. I have copied. I'm gonna copy this API key. Done. I'll come back to the studio and I'll paste the API key here. That's the first query parameter. Okay, API key. Then we have to provide the IP. Okay, so next query parameter is the specific IP that I'm looking for. So I'm just IP, and then the value of IP, let's do with the 8.8.8. Okay, now that is done. So let me save it. So if the construction of the URL, you can see API key and then the IP. So I think we are done here. Now how we can test it? We can test it with the help of this test button. So once I'm going to click on test, I'm going to get the response message and the response body. So let's do it. Let's click on test. You can see first, very importantly, the HTTP status, which is loaded as 200, and we know that we have already seen in the last message. We have already seen in the last video, HTTP status 200 means it is okay. That means we are able to connect. So you can see the endpoint is this, and then the query parameter has added. Of course, it will not show here. You can see parameters we have passed. API key is this, and you can see this details is coming as the JSON format, like IP 8.8.8.8, continent name NA North America, country code US. Each and every details is here in the response. Okay, the whole response is coming like that. Isn't it cool? Let's go back. And also, let's see how we can get a particular information. Maybe I'm gonna only want to get the city. So here also you can see there is a bulk IP geolocation. You can ask for a bulk IP. So this is the process you need to follow. Now there are other things that are filtering response. How you can do a filter. So if I want to see only a particular field, again I need to add a query parameter. You can see names of the required field must be passed as a query parameter fields. These are the returns value which I'm getting. So if I want, for an example, city, so the field names should be city. So here I'm gonna add a query parameter again, field. and I want the city field, only return the city field, not all the data. So I am filtering it, right? That's why we use query parameter. Done. Let me save it. You can see the green light is there. Done. Now let's send the test. Oh, we are still getting all the information. Why? What happened? I think let's me go to the API here. Okay, so it should be fields. Okay, fields. I have given field. So see how a simple mistake can create problem. So I'm gonna save it again. Now I'm gonna again test it. And you can see only we are getting the mountain view city. This is the IP address we are passing, and the city, only city response we are getting. Now you just think of it with this return message from this this get method that we are using, the REST method. How interesting it would be to display all this information, this IP address, this city, the result of this city in a form in the ServiceNow which is mentioned as city. Then it will come automatically there. So we can do this kind of stuff, and we are going to do that in the next video when I will show you how you can use this REST API, how you can get this response body. So this is the response body, right? If I click on test again, this is the response body we are getting. How you can use this response body inside of a business rule using REST API and use it in different way. Use it based on your needs. That's something we are gonna see in the next video. I think the video is quite long, so I'm not gonna stress it anymore. Only thing that we are left with the set HTTP log level and the preview script usage. So preview script usage is something that we are gonna see in the next video. And before creating the business rule and calling the REST API, I'm gonna also discuss the HTTP log level, right? How you can set a HTTP log. I hope you have learned a lot of things from today's video, guys. Again, I know the video is kind of a long one, but each and every moments in the video are very, very important to understand this ServiceNow REST outbound integration. All right. So I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. Please click a like button if you like it. Let me know in the comment section how helpful it is. Also, if you have any question regarding understanding of this topic, please ask me, and don't forget to share this with your friends and families so that it can reach out to many people. See you in my next video. Bye bye. Take care.